I'll start this review of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 on the Nintendo 64 with a trigger warning. I'm terrible at this series, as I mentioned in my reviews for the previous two games. If you're easily offended by a lack of manuals, watching bails on simple tricks, and seeing grinds uglier than the graphics of Superman 64, then I apologise. That being said, I've always found the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater original trilogy so damn fun to play. Developed by Edge of Reality and published by Activision in the year 2002, it's widely known as the final official release on the Nintendo 64 in the West, and for many people it was their last goodbye to the system. But Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 on the N64 is a strange title, being released across the end of the N64's time, but being an early release for the next generation of systems such as the PlayStation 2 and GameCube. Perhaps the simplest way of looking at this title is it's a clear showcase for the final abilities of the N64, but it also clearly shows a stark contrast between what you are missing out by not picking up on the next generation console version. THPS 3 is often regarded as the best game in the series, although the same could be said for its predecessor. On the PlayStation 2, its Metacritic score puts it right at the top along with titles like Grand Theft Auto, which shows you just how loved this title is. That being said, there were clearly concessions which had to be made when it came to giving the title an N64 release, and they do quickly begin to stack up when you get into the game. First of all, the game, in my opinion, looks great in many areas. The expansion pack support here doesn't really hinder the gameplay experience as it does in the majority of N64 games, so that right off the bat is a welcome feature here. The character models, while still having that softer look, do come across a step up from the previous N64 releases. There's a usual cast of characters here to choose from to play with, but the game doesn't include the Japanese exclusive skaters found in the other console versions. Fan favourite Bob Burnquist is also absent due to him at that time giving his likeness to ESPN X Games. The game's visuals are decent enough for the N64, although if you played any of the next-gen versions of the game, you'll see that significant amounts of both detail and in-level features have either been scaled back or cut out completely. You don't get the pedestrians or moving objects found in those versions, which also changes how you'll approach some of the objectives in the N64 game. I did enjoy the wide range of environments for you to skate in, but given that at least 4 levels were cut for the N64 version, it often makes this version of the game feel incomplete somewhat, and I would have liked to have seen more areas for me to skate and explore. This isn't the only limitation in the game, however. There's also a basic creator skater mode whom you can level up by completing objectives in the career mode. It doesn't offer anywhere near the amount of customization found in other titles, but what's here is enough to give you a fairly decent, presentable character and enough skill points to get you started, but you'll certainly want to quickly grab those stat points to give you any chance of becoming a good character. Speaking of customization, the N64 version has a fairly robust skate park creation toolkit. It offers far more customization and options than the Creator Skater, as well as having a handful of pre-made parks for you to try out or use for your inspiration. This will come in handy to greatly expand the game's length after completing the career mode. Speaking of which, the career mode is the game's main feature and one where you're likely to be spending most of your time. Thankfully, this mode is superb and offers 8 levels to play through, as well as the ability to unlock the downhill course, which isn't found in any other versions. Choosing your skater and then hitting the game's opening level, the Foundry, it'll bring back an instant vibe from the previous games in the series, and it acts as a fantastic introduction to the game. Veterans of the series will feel instantly at home here, whereas newcomers to the series will have a perfectly designed level which offers enough space to learn the mechanics, but still has enough secrets and challenge to help you find your feet in the game. In each of the game's levels there's a number of objectives, from hitting high scores, finding secret tapes, collecting the letters to spell skate, as well as a whole host of weird and wonderful level objectives which are very creative here, and they will test your skills in order to 100% complete the levels. Some levels take on the classic 3-heat tournament mode where your top scores are used to pit yourself up against the rest of the skaters to determine who takes home the gold medals. Whilst I did enjoy these levels a lot less than the more open style ones, they nevertheless came across as a welcome break, especially after you've spent considerable time trying to work out an elusive way to cross off another objective on the previous level. Although I'm not what I'd consider a great player, I was able to get to a credit roll situation within a few hours of playing the main career mode. Now of course that was dodging some of the more challenging tasks and objectives which I was no way able to achieve, and I could see what needed to be done, I just didn't have the skills to be able to put it off. Thankfully though, the main career mode does have a number of reasons to keep playing with different characters. Firstly, they do often feel unique and have their own special moves, which you'll certainly want to see. But mostly there's a long list of secrets to unlock which require multiple career mode playthroughs to completion with various characters. You'll want to unlock Wolverine to play as simply because it's Wolverine, and so there's another challenge for you to accomplish. The levels themselves have a series of secret gaps for you to jump. There's a long list for you to accomplish and the game tracks them. And so long after you've completed the campaign with every character, there's still many reasons to keep playing the game. What would have helped the game would have been more extensive multiplayer options. Whilst the game does support 2 players, it sadly lacked the online play found in other versions, which if you were a Tony Hawk's fan, then you'll no doubt have wanted to be playing that mode right away. The reality is that 4-player simultaneous play here would have been far too taxing on the system. And in reality, even if they could have pulled it off, I wouldn't have expected it to have either run with any sort of quality or had been any fun due to the limited screen real estate it would have offered the player. The controls though are where the game really stands out. Love or hate the N64 controller, but there's no denying that the game handles superbly well on the N64. You can choose to play with either the analog stick or the D-pad, and the button layout on the N64 pad makes it really easy just to pick up and play. Throw in features like the new addition of reverts and you have a game which was not only game changing but also included a level of skater control which nobody had seen before. The revert feature alone added a whole new sense of combo creation, and it meant that those who wanted to master the game could seamlessly link together tricks to rack up scores which would never have been possible in previous versions of the game. Of course it wouldn't be a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game without a stellar soundtrack, and the third outing of the series doesn't disappoint, and it should be a must listen to on anyone's Spotify playlist. Bands such as the Ramones, Red Hot Chili Peppers and Motorhead are played alongside the likes of KRS-One, Redman and Exhibit. That is if you play the CD-based versions of the game. The N64 soundtrack is extremely cut back, with just over a handful of tracks which have been cut down to just 2 minutes each. Yes, you do still get Ace of Spades and Blitzkrieg Bop, but it really hurts the game when the soundtrack for the N64 is just so lacking. Look, the same happened in both previous versions of the game on N64, so it was expected. But at the same time, you can't help but wish they could have just gone for a larger cart capacity, taken the financial hit in doing so, and just filled all that extra space with more tracks. What they did include, however, sounds much sharper and clearer than the previous games, and so I guess it's a trade-off in terms of quality versus quantity with this one. Since 2020 up until the time of this review, the value of the game has more than doubled. I strongly suspect this is due to the huge amount of people seeking nostalgia during lockdown and having time to go back and play the games they loved in their youth, and this is one example where the game's probably as good as you remember it. For me though, I have mixed feelings on the title. Now don't get me wrong, the game is superb for anyone who's an N64 fan such as myself, and the fact it actually made it out onto the system was a huge bonus. But I can't help but feel that in this day and age it's really not the way to play the game. Let's be honest, the PlayStation 2 is the way to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. That was the version the studio was focused on, and rightly so. That was going to be the version of the game which made them the huge profits that they rightly deserved. The N64 version was a nice to have, but it was clearly more of an afterthought than a focus. With the PS2 release you get better controls, far superior visuals, the full new feature suite including pedestrians in the game, and of course the complete CD quality soundtrack in all its glory. If you have only the N64 version to play the game on, then you will enjoy it, I have no doubt about it. But it's worth picking up the game on PS2 if you really want to get the full Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 experience. So it's over to you. Like me, did you play the game first on the PlayStation 2 and were blown away by just how much of a jump the series took with this release? Or were you yet to take the plunge on new hardware and pick this up as your only way to round off the Tony Hawk's trilogy on your N64? As we all know, the series has had some ups and downs after this release, and so I'd love to know what you think hurt the series the most and how you think they should continue to improve upon Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. As always, let me know your thoughts and feelings, memories and views in the comments section down below, and until next time.